Hey everybody, this is the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Markowitz.
And I'm Antonia Joel.
And we are glad you're listening today. We're talking about flow, the idea of flow, what is it, and how can you use it in your life. Isn't that a great subtitle? I just came up with that completely.
Just totally made it up.
Yeah. Which is great. And if you hear clean glasses in the background.
It's because there's clinking glasses in the background.
And tell them what you're drinking. Maybe they'll know why you're slurring your word. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. I'm drinking a margarita.
Well, but you haven't had enough to actually
I haven't. I've had like
you.
3 sips.
So I'm kidding
Although
about...
I'm a cheap date, so that might be enough.
I'm kidding about the fact that it would actually affect you.
Yeah. We're getting ourselves all lubed up for the podcast.
Exactly. We're getting in flow.
We're getting in flow.
That's today's...
The answer to getting in flow, margaritas.
Yes.
On the rocks.
All right. Well, that's our podcast for today.
That's right. Good night.
Wow. All right.
So what is flow? How are we defining it? How are you defining flow? Do you want me to define it? Because I don't have a reference aid.
Okay. So this is the name of the book is called...
The name of what book?
The name of a book.
Yeah.
That is called Flow. Mm-hmm. Is where you were getting your technical definitions from, right?
Yes.
And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
I said it right.
That's
yes.
right. Is the writer of the book called Flow.
Exactly. Is the writer of the book Roundabout way, yes. There is a book called Flow, and this guy wrote it. And you're going to talk about the technical definition, but how I would define flow is when I'm in an activity that I'm absorbed into, that I love doing, that someone has to come and like rip me away from. Or like I look down at my watch and it's been 5 hours and I'm like, holy crap, I'm still doing it. Like the sun has gone down.
Right.
I haven't peed. I haven't gone to get a drink. And I'm like, wow, I just played SimCity for like 5 hours straight.
Right. And it felt like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it felt like 20 minutes. You're like, whoa, that was incredible. To me, it's a feeling-based thing. Mm-hmm. And it feels good to be there. It feels present. You feel like you're in the moment. You're not thinking about anything else except the activity you're engaged in.
Yeah. That's
what flow means to me. That's how I would define it for myself. You have some technical definitions, though, that I would love to hear.
Well, I mean...
a technical definition.
One of the ways... in the book Flow, Csikszentmihalyi defines it... He uses like 4 or 5 different criteria. And I remember one of those, it really stood out to me. One of those criteria for an activity being it puts you in flow is that the activity or doing the activity gives you energy as opposed to taking energy away. So most activities that we do is like a cost. It taxes us. We have to give energy to the activity. When we're in flow, the activity feels like it's a self-energizing battery. Like it kind of feels like our batteries are getting juiced while we're doing the activity, which is why we can do it. Feels like we can do it indefinitely. Only, biological considerations interrupt us when we're in the middle of these activities.
And sometimes not even then.
And just put on your pull-up. Get your 2-liter of Mountain Dew and your Tito bag set up, and you're good to go for a couple days playing World of Warcraft, which is an activity that puts millions of people into flow every day.
Absolutely. Obviously, I see this with little kids. I won't mention any names of who these little kids are, but I've seen little kids get so absorbed in activity, they literally forget to go to the bathroom, and they have an accident.
Oh, you could name names, could you?
I'm not going to. But, it's this idea that you're just absorbed in what you're doing, and it's an exciting feeling. And one of the things one of the questions we ask when we are live profiling somebody at Personality Hacker, when I say live profiling, we're sitting down having a conversation where we ask a series of questions to identify their personality type. Is this question of flow? It's a question, what is it that you love to do so much that basically you have to be wretched away from it, or you, after hours, all of a sudden you feel the urge to pee and you're like, wow, that was like 6 hours. What is it that you have in your life that happens with? And this really helps unlock who the person is, what kind of personality they possess. Because if you know how they're in flow, you know a lot about how their brain works, about how they make decisions and learn new information. So it's a really interesting topic for us here at Personality Hacker because...
what's the bedrock question? It's like the first question that I teach students is the flow question.
Exactly.
And my version of it is, What do you love to do so much the only reason you stop is because you're exhausted? Otherwise, you'd go on indefinitely. And the reason why this is so powerful in active profiling, or asking people a question as opposed to having them just go through like an online assessment or a questionnaire, is that they're telling us what their favorite mental process is. What is the most fun thing for their brain to do? And each personality type favors just one mental process. Now, when we talk about mental processes, we're referring to, primarily, even though we have other maps and models that kind of overlay over this, we're talking about what Carl Jung called cognitive functions. And we sort of define them loosely as mental processes because it's an easier phrase to understand than cognitive function. So these are mental processes that all of us have access to. There's 8 of them. 4 of them help us learn new information, and 4 of them help us make decisions. And we pick one of each. We pick one of those mental processes as our favorite way of learning new information. And we pick one of those mental processes as our favorite way of deciding, or evaluating information, or basically making decisions. And it's the combination of those 2 things that help define our personality type. What is our favorite way to learn new information? What is our favorite way of evaluating or making decisions? But even amongst those 2 things, even amongst those 2 mental processes, one stands out to us as being our favorite mental process. And if we can access that mental process, it'll put us in flow. Yeah.
And some people have this dialed in. They know how to access flow in their life already. You think of somebody like maybe an athlete. They get out on the basketball court and instantly they're in the zone. They are present, or they're on a football field and they're present. Others, it's maybe reading. Others, it's like literally trying to go to sleep at night. Puts their brain into like almost like a flow state.
Right.
Because it starts racing with all the thoughts they've had, and they haven't had time away from society and the life of the day. And now finally it's quiet at night. They can start thinking to themselves, and that puts them in flow. So there's different things for different people that put them in flow based on their personality type. I guess maybe helpful to the podcast listeners is taking this idea of flow and thinking about how they can, A, identify it when they're there, and then B, get there more often. Because for me, like I said, I don't know, do you feel good? Like, is it a feeling? I know you're a thinker type person. You're very heady. Does it feel like emotionally good for you to be in a flow state? Do you get like juiced by it? Do you feel
It feels really, for me, flow feels very kinesthetic. It feels like every cell is juiced. Like somebody just put a spark of electricity through me. And what's interesting is I learned this actually from somebody else who's, in my opinion, on the cutting edge of personality psychology. He's a friend. His name is Dario Nardi. Used to be a professor at UCLA and teach personality psychology at UCLA, but he's moved on from there. While he was at UCLA, he had the ability to hook people up to, using UCLA funds, which was awesome, being a professor, so he's able to do extra study. He was hooking people up to EEG machines and mapping their mind and finding out what their mental patterns were when they use different mental processes, the ones that we're talking about, these cognitive functions, these 8 processes, 8 functions. And depending upon their personality type, in this case, their Myers-Briggs personality type, they had a different mental process that consistently lit up their entire brain. That created flow. It was like watching flow on a monitor when people were hooked up to EEGs effectively meant their entire brain lit up like a Christmas tree. And so each personality type has their own flow state. In fact, it's observable. If you're hooked up to a machine, it will tell, an EEG machine, it will tell you what your flow state is. You could almost reverse engineer it. You get somebody in flow, you know what their personality type is. Because each personality type has a predictable flow state, which is really fascinating. So knowing your flow state means knowing which mental process your brain favors above all others. And what's interesting, I think I got off on a little tangent there. I remember what your original question was, how do I feel when I get into flow? What's interesting is that he discovered that people of my personality type, now in the Myers-Briggs system, I'm an ENTP. And ENTPs and ENFPs.
And in the in our typology system, you would be...
I'd lead with exploration, and I would support it with accuracy. So I'm exploration accuracy.
You're learning by exploring, and you're making decisions using the criteria of accuracy, basically.
And ENFPs lead with exploration as well, and they supplement it with a process called authenticity. So both ENFPs and ENTPs lead with this process called exploration in the system that we primarily use, the Genius system, which builds on top of Myers-Briggs. So the point of all this is that all ENPs in the Myers-Briggs system, ENFPs and ENTPs, that lead with this process called exploration. We've called it exploration. The technical term is extroverted intuition. All of them have a fits and starts relationship with their flow state. They are the personality type that is the most difficult to get into flow. It's actually very difficult for them to get into flow. And if you watched their brain, right? If you watched a map of their brain when they're in flow, they have a very unusual pattern to their brains. Very unusual from everyone else. Everybody's brain lights up like a Christmas tree when they're in flow, but it's the ENPs, the people leading with exploration, that's their favorite mental process, that is lighting up like one of those Christmas trees that have the disparate lights, the alternating light current.
Yeah.
And they said that the only time a person's mental or mind lights up like that, besides what I'm talking about, besides ENPs in flow, are when people are drunk. All right, that is what it looks like on an EEG machine when somebody's drunk, is that their brains light up in all these sort of disparate, syncopated rhythms.
So you must have been in flow earlier. It wasn't the actual
That's right.
rate.
I was just in flow. Well, and that was really funny. One of my students recently said, so I'm an INFP. In order to use exploration, should I drink a lot? And I'm like, no. It's not the same. It just happens to be that the pattern is really similar.
Yeah.
Because when you're drunk, and the reason why the pattern works that way for ENPs is that the exploration process has you seeing relationships between things that other people do not see relationships between. So like a really great example of this, and this is something Daria Nardi uses to, kind of figure out what level of exploration a person is using, is he'll grab two very different objects. He'll grab like a cup and like a box of nerd candy, and he'll go, so which one's the male? These two things are getting married. Which one's the male and which one's the female? And most personality types will look at him like, is this a trick question?
You're a crazy person.
Yeah, and the other percentage would be like, I think you might be crazy. And another percentage of the personality types will kind of look at it for a while and go, well, I don't know. And they'll kind of deconstruct it. And they'll play along, but they're deconstructing it. ENPs instantly answer because they already are seeing relationships between disparate items in the outside world.
Yeah.
So that said, that's why their brains look like that. And the only time the other personality types experience this is when they're drunk.
Yeah.
And who knows why, right? I don't know. I don't know why I don't have that information. I just know that that's the case. So that pattern is particularly difficult to get into flow. It takes a long time for people of those types, those personality types, to get into flow. But once they're there, they'll go for days. They'll literally like drop of exhaustion from being in a flow state. They'll work fast and furious for like 48 hours straight, and then they'll take a week off. And sometimes they do their best work in that 48 hours, right? Like sometimes they'll create masterpieces, and then they just like crash. So for me, it's almost like being, not that I've done cocaine, but it's like I'm on crack or something. It's like I've done, I've drank 50 glasses or cups of coffee. I'm just absolutely in this extremely intense, very excited, very visceral place, and I can just go. And the moment that the spell is gone, the moment that the flow state is over, I'm done. Like, I'm totally spent. I'll lay there and watch crime shows for, 2 days straight, right? And drink Alka-Seltzer and hope that I survive.
Which basically tells me that, as I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, and the audience is probably asking the same question, okay, you apply this to business, apply this to relationships, apply this to life. You're going to have some personalities that are going to be really good at that, being in flow over a longer period of time, maybe days, months, even years, not every single moment, but they have an easier time getting into flow and staying in flow, whatever their current job or business situation is. And there's others that are more creative and might have or not more creative. There are others that use this process you're talking about that take a moment to get into. It burns hot and fast and burns out really quick. So it's this kind of like unpredictable place to be in. It's like, if you have one of these employees maybe, or if you're married to somebody like this, you're like, why can't you get your crap together?
Right.
And it's like, it's hard to get into that flow state. And once they do, they can be present there, but it's hard to get there.
Exactly.
In some ways.
Well, and some people experience flow only when they know they'll have no distractions.
Yeah.
So they don't get into flow like the people that I was talking about before, people of our type, right? ENPs, ENFPs, ENTPs. It's tough for them. They don't have a lack of permission around it. It's just tough for them to get into flow, right? They just have to have certain contexts be like, they have to be excited, they have to be interested, they have to be inspired. There's like a certain criteria list. And then there are other types that just need all of their T's crossed and their I's dotted. And then once that happens, they can get into flow. And so sometimes they have difficulty getting into flow because life comes at you too quickly. And it's tough to get everything, like all those distractions. It's tough to mitigate all those distractions. And that's actually one of the personality types. This will be an introverted type, usually introverted judgers in the Myers-Briggs system. They will lay down after an extremely hectic, busy day. And what they need to get into flow is quiet. As little sensory input as possible. And so they'll lay down at the end of the day, ready to sleep, and then suddenly their brain is like going like a million miles an hour. And they wake back up and they have terrible insomnia problems because now they're in flow, right? They laid down, they got their sensory deprivation, and now they're in flow. So knowing when you're in flow or how you get into flow, understanding your personality type and what gets you there, and being able to create a context for it, it could help with things like insomnia. I mean, how many different areas of your life does insomnia kill, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can't get any quality of life because I have insomnia. Well, my first question is always, are you an introverted judger? Are you an IJ, right, of some sort? Are you not giving yourself any quiet time during the day? Well, that's probably why you have insomnia. Now, that's not a diagnosis across the board for every person who experiences insomnia, but it could be one of the contributing factors. So knowing when you get into flow and how can explain a lot about your behaviors, your patterns, sometimes things that impact your health. It can be very high leverage because your body wants to get there. Like your brain and your body wants to get into flow. It's one of the ways that you regenerate your batteries. It's one of the ways that you live a high quality life and experience happiness. So your brain and your body, they're looking for it. They're looking for ways to get into flow. And so if you're not giving yourself an opportunity to do it in a constructive way, it will interrupt your life trying to get there.
Yeah. I would just give a recommendation to the listeners. This is an exercise I've done before. Sit down and make a list of maybe 3 to 5 things that you could identify where you're present, you're in a flow state, and start noticing maybe the pattern in some of those. Because again, with some of the stuff we teach in personality hackers, it's a good place to be because you can get some of your best work done. You can figure out some of your best ideas. You can make some of the biggest connections. Will you always be in this place? Like, I will never be in flow when I'm doing my taxes or filing paperwork, ever.
Yeah, no, I mean,
but I have to do it.
It's hard to be in flow when you're suicidal.
Exactly. Like that's like the worst possible thing for me. But I have to do it, so I got to still push through. But there are ways, if I'm working on a creative project, or I've got a big, deadline looming, or something's coming up, to get myself in a place where I'm getting creative ideas, I'm getting new insights, and I'm able to create energy in myself to push through maybe a long period of time to get to an end of a deadline or something.
Yeah.
And I have certain tricks and tips that I've used in my own life that have gotten me there quicker, more quickly, excuse me. And, I think that would be good for our listeners to make a quick list of some of those things that get you in flow. And then how do you get into those activities? How do you get there?
So if you find your list to be things like, reading, walking in the park alone, like reflecting, if you find your activities being introverted, then you're going to want to create a context that allows you to, be alone for at least as long as you need to be in order to get into flow. So if you're not finding yourself in a flow state, maybe you're not giving yourself enough alone time, right? Maybe that's the thing you need. Conversely, if you find your flow state to be things like, hanging out with a group of friends, managing a project, right? Like getting your goals accomplished, then your flow state's going to be an outer world activity. It's going to be extroverted. And so if you're finding yourself spending too much time alone or not giving yourself the opportunity to get into those states, then you need to spend more time in the outer world. And so look for the patterns of your flow states or your flow activities, right?
Yeah.
Answer this question. What is something I love to do so much? The only reason I stop is because I'm exhausted. Otherwise, I would do it indefinitely. And as Joel said, write 3 down. The goal of the flow question is to get it down to 1, but it doesn't have to be just 1. And it would be better to have at least 3, maybe up to 5.
Yeah, 3 to 5, I think would be good.
Yeah, and then deconstruct it. Try to figure out what the pattern is in all of your flow states and ask yourself, how can you meaningfully build the context that allows you to have that flow state? How can you meaningfully and deliberately put that into your life?
Yeah, for example, I identified one of my flow states. I really feel present and in flow when I'm performing, when I'm doing some kind of performance or I'm on stage in front of an audience of sorts. And so one of the things I did in the last month, I signed up for some improv classes to give me a platform, a place where I could begin to enter into more flow states, to begin to perform every week for 2 hours, and then we had like a class show at the end. It was really fun. Mm-hmm. But it was a way for me to try to get into more of a flow state so I can begin to increase my time in flow in performance.
Well, and we live kind of away from the city, and so it was like over an hour to, each direction to get to the improv class. And what it was so funny is that every week you were like, I don't think I want to go this week. Yeah. You're like, I don't want to make the drive. I don't want to go be an improv. Like, how many classes can I miss and still be able to be in the show? And then when you got there...
Oh, I showed up, and within a few minutes, I'm present. I look up, and 2 hours and 15 minutes has passed, and he's like, okay, class is over. I'm like, wait, we just start? Wait, right. What? Like, it was so fulfilling and so much a flow state for me to be there and be engaged in that way. I didn't want to leave. I'm like, I want to do this all night. I'd stay till midnight, whatever.
Yeah.
It was definitely that kind of a situation for me.
And that's a really good way to kind of indicate whether or not something is flow for you. Like most of us don't really want to change states. Like if we're doing something like, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm eating potato chips and I want to stop. Like, why would I want to stop? But then you get to the gym and, you're on the treadmill and then 15 minutes in, you're like, I've got a runner's high and I feel amazing. Now, I personally don't experience that. At no point do I not want to be sitting on the couch eating the potato chips. However, I do know there are people who instantly get into flow when they start running. So what's the activity that maybe you are even reluctant to start, but once you're there, you know that you love it?
Yeah.
And those will be tips to your flow state. And then one more thing I want to mention is if you want to know your personality type and definitively know what the cognitive function or mental process that is the flow state for your personality type is, you can take the personality type quiz or the assessment at personalityhacker.com. There's a free version and there's a paid version. The free version will give you your genius style. So you'll know, like I'm an ENTP, but my genius style is exploration accuracy. Joel's an ENFP. His genius style is exploration authenticity. So the free version will give you some hints as to the things that you're great at and will tell you what your genius style is. The paid version will give you your flow state as well as 3 other things we haven't even mentioned. That is your growth state, your defensive state, which can also be used to build intimacy, and your blind spot, which is also your aspiration. So if you want to know what those mean and you want to know what that is for you, go to personalityhacker.com and take the quiz. But like I said, there's a free version that will give you an overview of information that's pretty great too.
Yeah, kind of a summary, give you a clue of some of the famous people that are maybe your similar type and kind of a quick rundown of what that might mean to you.
Exactly.
So yeah, head over there. Also, let us know who you are. We have started this podcast and we are getting thousands of downloads.
Yeah.
And we want to know who you are because we can't see you or talk to you, but come on the website. Under this podcast, leave us a comment. Tell us who you are. Maybe list some of your flow states. Ask questions. Be engaged with us. You can find us at personalityhacker.com. We also have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/personalityhacker. And on Twitter, it's personalityhack. HACK is the Twitter handle.
Yeah.
So make yourself known and reach out. Connect with us. We'd love to connect back. So I'm Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
We'll talk to you later.